Being a survivor is not the problem. Remaining in survival mode long after the danger has passed can become the problem. Hi guys, Dr. Luana here, and can we talk? You know what? This is going to be this video is going to have some length, so go ahead and get comfy. Get your glass of something or a cup of something, and what time is it? Yeah, get comfy because I want to talk about what it really means to be a survivor and how at some point surviving has to make room for living. You see, our brains are beautifully designed for survival. When we're in danger, our brain will ask questions like am I safe? What could hurt me? Who can I trust? Or how can I keep this from happening again? Those questions are not weaknesses. They save our lives. The problem is, if the brain never gets the message that the danger has ended, it keeps asking those same survival questions, and sometimes for years. Then survival stops being an event and becomes an identity. When we hear the word survivor, many of us immediately think of what? We think about things like abuse or assault, war, or a terrible accident. But survival wears many faces. Maybe you're surviving a chronic illness. Maybe you're surviving loneliness. Maybe you're surviving paycheck to paycheck. Maybe you're surviving grief. Maybe you're surviving an environment that keeps you in a state of constant stress. Or maybe you survive something you don't even talk about anymore. Whatever your story, survival served a purpose, but it was never meant to become your identity. So, how do you recognize survival mode? Good question, because not everyone is hiding in a closet or having panic attacks. Sometimes it looks much more ordinary. It sounds like, I always need to know where the exit is. I don't trust compliments. I keep people at arm's length. I apologize for everything. I never really relax. I always expect bad news. I overwork. I over-explain. I feel guilty when I'm happy. I have a hard time receiving love. I have to stay in control. I scan every room the moment I walk in. I can't rest because I always expect something to happen. It always feels like the other shoe is about to drop. Think about that for a second. Many people would never call those trauma responses. They simply call them, well, that's who I am. That's my personality. But what if what you think is your personality is actually your survival strategy? Can I ask you something? What if the very thing that saved your life is now keeping you from fully living it? You see, survival mode has a way of creating compartments. One holds fear, another holds grief, another holds anger, another holds hypervigilance, another holds shame. We took pieces of ourselves into those compartments because opening them all at once would be, too overwhelming. And eventually we forget that we ever put them in there. Now, hear me clearly. Survival is adaptive. It is intelligent. It is necessary. It kept you alive. And because it kept you alive, it deserves your gratitude, not your criticism. It was a gift for the season you needed it, but it was never meant to become your permanent address. You don't shame the part of you that survived. Then when you're ready, you gently tell it, thank you for getting me here, but I don't need you driving every part of my life anymore. Now, let's talk about PTSD just for a minute. Not everyone has PTSD, but almost everyone has survival patterns. Some people survived childhood chaos. Some survived emotional neglect, divorce, addiction in the family, poverty, racism, betrayal, cancer, infertility, bullying, the loss of a child, military service, a toxic workplace, chronic illness. You see, the stories are different. However, the nervous system is remarkably similar. Different events, same nervous system. Honor the part of you that survived. It carried you when you couldn't carry yourself. But ask yourself, is it still protecting me? Or is it protecting me from a danger that no longer exists? You see, people often say, I'm a survivor. And I can hear the music in the background. And maybe you are. But what if that's only chapter 1? Maybe chapter 2 sounds like this. I'm finally learning how to live. If you survive something, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. Truly, truly, truly. You see, there was a time when survival was exactly what you needed. But if every decision you make today is still being filtered through yesterday's danger, maybe it's time to ask yourself a different question. Not how do I survive another day, but how do I begin living the life I survived for? Because surviving kept you alive. Living reminds you why. And I think you deserve that, you know? I began putting this video together believing it was about survivors and survival. I began thinking that it was about survivors and survival, that mode or those modes. But somewhere along the way, I realized it has become a conversation about something else. Permission. Permission to stop expecting every day to be a battle. Permission to rest. Permission to trust. Permission to laugh without guilt. Permission to build instead of simply protect. Permission to be known not for what happened to you, but for who you are becoming. You see your story? It deserves to be honored, but it was never meant to be your whole identity. So I'll leave you with one final question. Yes, we're coming to a close here. I'll leave you with one final question. What if your life is allowed to become bigger than your survival story? Oof. Now, if this message gave you something to think about, or if you know somebody who might need to hear it, I would appreciate if you would like, follow, subscribe, leave a comment, do something so the algorithm can see it and put it out there, because every interaction helps these conversations reach somebody who might need them. Thank you. And of course, as always, you stay blessed.